My husband and I are both in our early 40s. I'm 42. He's 39. We've been together for 10 years, married for nearly 8, and we have 2 children, ages 7 and 4. For over 2 years now, our bedroom has been completely dead. Not because I don't love him, not because of some affair or addiction, but because after I endured 6 pregnancies in 7 years, resulting in 2 live births, 3 devastating miscarriages, and 1 abortion I never thought I'd have to have, my husband refused to get a vasectomy, and when he finally did get it, 2 years later, he did something I never could have imagined. He refused to finish the job. I'm sitting here now, looking at medical bills scattered on our bed, wondering how we got to this point. How a simple 15-minute procedure turned into a 2-year nightmare that destroyed everything we built. I don't know how to move forward, and I'm desperate for perspective, because right now I don't even recognize the man I married. Let me walk you through what my body has endured over the past 7 years, because when I say 6 pregnancies, people don't always understand what that actually means. 2016, my first pregnancy, an accident. It ended in a missed miscarriage at 9 weeks. I had a D&C procedure, my first time going under anesthesia for something like this. I thought it was the worst thing that could happen to me. I had no idea what was coming. Early 2019, the birth of our first child. This was intentional, planned, wanted. The pregnancy was difficult. Morning sickness that lasted all 9 months, preeclampsia at the end. The postpartum period nearly broke me, but we had our son, and I loved him more than anything. Late 2020, another intentional pregnancy. We wanted our son to have a sibling. At 11 weeks, I started bleeding. My husband was on a work trip across the country. I was alone with our 2-year-old, calling my mother to come get him while I bled out on the bathroom floor. I miscarried naturally, no D&C this time, just me, alone, losing another baby while trying not to scare my toddler. Early 2021, we tried again, got pregnant. At 8 weeks, there was no heartbeat. Another missed miscarriage. Another D&C, my second surgery. I remember crying in the recovery room, asking the nurse if my body was broken. Early 2022. Against all odds, I got pregnant again. This time, it stuck. Our daughter was born healthy, but the pregnancy was even harder than the first. I developed gestational diabetes. The postpartum period was a fog of anxiety and physical recovery. But we had our 2 children. We were done. We both knew it. I knew it in my bones. Mid-2023, the one that changed everything. An accidental pregnancy when our daughter was just 15 months old, the pregnancy I said would never happen, the one that led to the abortion I never thought I'd have to have. After our daughter was born in 2022, I asked my husband to get a vasectomy. I didn't think it was a big ask. By that point, I had been through 3 miscarriages, 2 surgical procedures, 2 brutal pregnancies, and 2 difficult postpartum recoveries. I had been on birth control pills for over 15 years before we met, and I was done putting hormones in my body. I was done. My body was done. I looked into getting my tubes removed, but the surgery was invasive, required general anesthesia, and had a longer recovery time. A vasectomy, on the other hand, was a 15-minute outpatient procedure. After everything I had been through, everything my body had survived, I felt like it was his turn to take responsibility for our reproductive health. It seemed fair. It seemed reasonable. He said no. I was disappointed, but I told myself I had to respect his bodily autonomy, the same way I'd want him to respect mine. So I set a boundary instead. I told him clearly, if I get pregnant accidentally, I will not hesitate to get an abortion. I am not having a 3rd child under any circumstances. But I really, really want to avoid that situation. We agreed to use an ovulation tracking app and the pull-out method. Looking back, I can't believe how stupid that decision was, but I trusted him. I thought we were being careful. 15 months after our daughter was born, I was pregnant again. I was confident in my decision to have the abortion. I'm still confident in that decision. My body could not handle another pregnancy. My mental health couldn't handle it. Our family couldn't handle it, but what I wasn't prepared for was the tidal wave of guilt, shame, and rage that followed. I was angry at myself for trusting that method. I was angry at my body for betraying me again. And I was furious at my husband, not just for refusing the vasectomy in the first place, but for not preventing this, for not protecting me from having to go through this. After the abortion, I told him point blank, I am not having sex with you until you get a vasectomy. I cannot risk this happening again. I will not survive it emotionally. He agreed. He said he'd make the appointment, and I believed him. About a month after the abortion, my husband tried to initiate sex. I reminded him of what I'd said. That's when he told me he'd made the appointment, or so he claimed. It was booked out for 3 months, he said. For those 3 months, I held to my boundary about intercourse, but I did other things. Foreplay, intimacy that didn't risk pregnancy. I was showing good faith. I trusted that he was going to follow through. In the 2 weeks leading up to the appointment, I asked him casually several times, "When's your appointment again?" And every single time, he'd say, "Oh, I think it's next Wednesday at 2. Always starting with "I think," like he wasn't quite sure, like it wasn't the most important appointment of our marriage. I asked if he needed me to drop him off or pick him up. We only have one car. He insisted he'd take an Uber. He had it handled. Wednesday at 2 p.m. came. I got home with the kids around 3:30, expecting him to be recovering on the couch. Instead, I found him sitting in his home office, working on his laptop like it was any other day. "What are you doing here?" I asked, confused. "Wasn't your appointment today?" He looked up, barely fazed. He said he either forgot about the appointment or got too busy with work to go. I can't remember which excuse he used because, honestly, it didn't matter. The result was the same. I stood there holding our baby on my hip, our son tugging at my leg, and I felt something inside me crack. I told him he should have taken the day off work, that he should have set calendar alerts, that I had reminded him 3 or 4 times in the past 2 weeks alone. He said he'd rebook. He never rebooked. For 2 years I would ask him, sometimes calmly, sometimes desperately, when he was going to schedule the vasectomy. And every single time he had an excuse. Work was too busy. The clinic was booked out. He'd get to it next month. He never once sat me down and said, "I'm scared," or "I don't want to do this." He just avoided it, like I was nagging him about taking out the trash, not about protecting my body from another traumatic pregnancy. During those 2 years, our marriage withered. We had no sex, no intimacy, no emotional connection. We were roommates raising kids together, nothing more. Finally, 2 years into this nightmare, I asked him, "How do you think our marriage can survive like this?" He sat there, silent. He had nothing to say. I told him I was done bringing it up. I was exhausted from begging, but my position hadn't changed. No sex, no intimacy, not until he got the vasectomy and I felt safe again. A couple of months later, he tried to initiate sex. When I didn't respond, he said casually, almost like an afterthought, "I told you I have the appointment booked, right?" No, he hadn't told me. He hadn't mentioned it once since the last time I'd brought it up. "When is it?" I asked. "I think it's like a month from now," he said. Vague, uncertain, just like before. I told him to come back to me after it was done. After the last missed appointment and the 2-year wait, I would believe it when I saw proof. 1 month later, exactly 2 years and 1 month after the abortion, he told me he'd gotten the vasectomy. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel relief, but once again, he refused my offer to drive him or pick him up. He went alone. I have no proof except his word. And at this point, his word doesn't mean much. Still, I thought maybe this was it. Maybe we could start to rebuild. I reminded him that he'd need to get a sperm count check at 3 months to confirm he was sterile, and that I wouldn't feel comfortable until that was done. He nodded, said he understood. It's been 7 months since the vasectomy. He still hasn't gotten the follow-up sperm count test. I've asked him repeatedly. I've reminded him constantly. I've explained that the 3-month follow-up is standard medical protocol, that without it, there's no way to know if the vasectomy actually worked. His response? He said they checked him at 2 weeks and told him he just needed to ejaculate about 40 times and that a 3-month test wasn't necessary. That's a lie. I've researched this extensively. I've spoken to my own doctor. Every single medical source says the same thing. A sperm count test at 3 months is essential. Vasectomies can fail. Tubes can reconnect. Without that test, there's no way to know for sure. We've had sex a handful of times since the vasectomy, mostly because I believed he would eventually get the follow-up done. But now, I don't believe that anymore. I think he's lying to me, just like he's been lying for the past 2.5 years. And here's the final insult. I looked into getting my tubes removed myself this week. It would cost $30,500 out of pocket. We don't have that kind of money, so now I'm sitting here, considering going back on birth control, the same birth control I swore I'd never take again, because my husband won't spend 20 minutes at a lab to give me peace of mind. My marriage is destroyed. There's no other word for it. The trust is gone. The intimacy is gone. The emotional connection we once had has evaporated, and my husband has made zero effort to fix any of it. He won't talk about what's happened. He won't acknowledge the damage he's caused. It's like he thinks if he just ignores it long enough, it'll all go away. But I can't ignore it. I'm terrified of getting pregnant again. I'm terrified of my own husband. And even if he did get the follow-up tomorrow and came back with a clean bill of health, I don't know if I'd even want to be intimate with him anymore. Because this isn't just about a vasectomy. It's about a man who watched my body break 6 times and decided his mild discomfort mattered more than my survival. It's about a man who let me bleed out alone, who watched me go through an abortion I never wanted, and then spent 2 years lying to my face while I begged him to protect me. I don't know where to go from here. Can a marriage survive this kind of betrayal? Is it even worth trying to save? Before we continue, hit subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from. I believe this story found you today for a reason. I thought I was being reasonable when I asked him. It was early 2022, just a few weeks after our daughter was born. I was sitting in our bedroom, still recovering from the delivery, still bleeding, still exhausted in a way that felt permanent. My body felt like a battlefield, scarred from 2 C-sections, hollowed out by 3 miscarriages, marked by procedures I never wanted to endure. I looked at my husband and said the words I'd been rehearsing in my head for months. I need you to get a vasectomy. I wasn't demanding. I wasn't angry. I was just done. Done with the physical toll. Done with the hormones. Done with carrying the entire burden of our reproductive choices on my shoulders, or more accurately, in my uterus. I explained my reasoning calmly, like I was presenting a case to a jury. I'd been on birth control pills for over 15 years before we met. I'd had 3 miscarriages, 2 of which required surgical intervention. I'd been through 2 difficult pregnancies and 2 brutal postpartum recoveries. A vasectomy was minimally invasive, 15 minutes, local anesthesia, a few days of rest. Meanwhile, getting my tubes removed would require general anesthesia, abdominal surgery, and weeks of recovery. After everything my body has been through, I told him, I think it's your turn to take responsibility for this. He looked at me like I'd asked him to donate a kidney, and then he said no. Just no. No explanation. No discussion about his fears or concerns. No acknowledgement of what I'd just laid out for him. Just a flat refusal. Like I'd suggested he change the color of the living room walls, and he simply wasn't interested. I was stunned, but I told myself I had to respect his decision, the same way I'd want him to respect mine when it came to my body. That's what good partners do, right? They honor each other's boundaries, even when it hurts. So I swallowed my disappointment and came up with a compromise. I told him clearly, if I get pregnant accidentally, I will have an abortion. I am not having a third child. But I really want to avoid that situation altogether. He nodded. He understood. Or at least, I thought he did. We agreed to use an ovulation tracking app and the pull-out method. Looking back now, I can see how spectacularly stupid that plan was. But in that moment, exhausted and desperate, I convinced myself it would work. I had no idea I was about to make the worst mistake of my life. 15 months later, I was staring at 2 pink lines that shouldn't have existed. Our daughter had just turned 15 months old. I was finally starting to feel like myself again, or at least a version of myself that could function. And then my period was late. Not just a day or two, a week, then 10 days. I knew before I took the test. My body knew. It had been through this 5 times before. I sat on the bathroom floor holding that positive pregnancy test and felt something inside me break. Not sadness. Not even shock, just pure primal rage. At my body for betraying me again. At the ovulation app for being useless. At the pull-out method for being the joke I should have known it was. And most of all, at my husband for refusing the vasectomy that would have prevented this entirely. I had told him exactly what would happen if this occurred. I had been crystal clear. No third child, no exceptions. Abortion without hesitation. I had meant every word. And yet, now that I was facing it, I felt like I was drowning. I made the appointment the next day. I didn't tell anyone except my husband. I went through the ultrasound, the counseling, the waiting period. I answered all their questions to confirm I was sure. And I was sure. My body could not handle another pregnancy. My mental health couldn't survive it. Our family of 4 couldn't become 5. This was the only option. But being sure about the decision didn't prepare me for what came after. The procedure itself was quick, clinical, efficient. They gave me pills, sent me home, told me what to expect. The physical pain was manageable. It was the emotional aftermath that nearly destroyed me. The guilt hit first. Irrational, suffocating guilt that I couldn't logic my way out of. Then came the shame, whispered in my own voice late at night when I couldn't sleep. And beneath it all, a white-hot anger that terrified me with its intensity. Anger at myself for trusting that stupid tracking app. Anger at the universe for making my body a minefield. And anger, so much anger, at my husband for watching me go through this when a 15-minute procedure could have prevented all of it. I had been through 3 miscarriages, 2 surgeries, 2 brutal pregnancies, and now an abortion. My body was a catalog of reproductive trauma, and he couldn't be bothered to get a vasectomy. That's when I knew something had to change. I couldn't keep living like this, terrified of my own body, terrified of my own husband. So I drew a line in the sand, one I swore I would never cross again. No more sex. Not until he got the vasectomy. Not until I felt safe again. I told him the day after the abortion that I was done being a battlefield for his indecision. We were sitting in our living room, the kids finally asleep, the house quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. I was still cramping, still bleeding, still emotionally raw in a way that made my skin feel too tight. And I looked at him and said, "I am not having sex with you until you get a vasectomy. I cannot risk going through this again. I won't survive it." He nodded. He looked concerned, maybe even remorseful. "Okay," he said. "I understand. I'll make the appointment." For a moment I felt relief wash over me. Finally he was hearing me. Finally. He understood the gravity of what I'd been through, what we'd been through. I thought maybe this nightmare had a purpose, that it would be the wake-up call he needed to protect us both. But days turned into weeks, and he didn't make the appointment. I didn't push at first. I was still recovering, physically and emotionally. I was exhausted from the abortion, from the guilt, from the constant mental calculations about fertility windows and safe days. I needed space to heal, so I waited. About a month after the abortion, he tried to initiate sex with me. I was stunned by the audacity. Did he think I'd forgotten? Did he think my boundary was negotiable? I pulled away and reminded him, my voice sharper than I intended. "I told you, not until you get the vasectomy." That's when he suddenly remembered. Oh yes, the appointment. He'd made it, he said, but it was booked out for 3 months. The clinic was busy. He'd put it on his calendar. Don't worry. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. So I made a decision to show good faith. I told him I wouldn't have intercourse until after the procedure, but I was willing to do other things. Foreplay, intimacy that didn't risk pregnancy. I thought I was being fair. I thought I was meeting him halfway while still protecting myself. Looking back now, I can see how naive that was. Because he never intended to follow through. The appointment he claimed to have made was just another way to string me along. To buy himself 3 more months of me not nagging him. 3 more months of me believing his lies. He had 3 months to prepare, 3 months to mark his calendar, to set reminders, to arrange coverage at work. 3 months to prove that he actually cared about my safety more than his own convenience. He wasted every single one of them. The appointment was supposed to be on Wednesday at 2 p.m. I know this because I asked him about it repeatedly in the 2 weeks leading up to it. "When's your appointment again?" I'd say casually while folding laundry or making dinner. And every single time, he'd respond the same way. "Oh, I think it's next Wednesday at 2. Always prefacing with, "I think," like he wasn't quite certain, like it wasn't the most important appointment of our entire marriage. I offered to drive him. We only have 1 car, and I wanted to be there for him to support him through this. But he insisted he was fine taking an Uber. He had it handled, he said. Don't worry. So Wednesday came, and I tried not to obsess over the clock. I took the kids to the park that afternoon, pushing our daughter on the swings while our son climbed on the jungle gym. I checked my phone around 2:15, wondering if he'd texted to say it was done. Nothing. Maybe he was still in the procedure. Maybe his phone was off. I told myself not to worry. I got home around 3:30, kids in tow, expecting to find him on the couch with an ice pack, maybe watching TV, recovering. Instead, I heard the clicking of his keyboard coming from his home office. I walked to the doorway, our baby on my hip, and stared at him sitting at his desk, eyes on his laptop screen, completely absorbed in his work like it was any other Wednesday afternoon. "What are you doing here?" I asked, confusion bleeding into my voice. "Wasn't your appointment today?" He looked up, barely fazed. "Oh," he said, and then came the excuse. He either forgot about the appointment or got too busy with work to go. Over 2 years later, I honestly can't remember which pathetic explanation he offered because it didn't matter. The result was the same. I stood there, frozen, feeling something fundamental crack inside my chest. This was the appointment he'd booked 3 months ago, The appointment I'd reminded him about 3 or 4 times in the past 2 weeks alone. The appointment that was supposed to end this nightmare and make me feel safe again. "You should have taken the day off work when you booked it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You should have set calendar alerts." "I reminded you so many times." He said he'd rebook. I didn't believe him, but I didn't know yet just how right I was not to. He never rebooked the appointment, and our marriage died slowly, excuse by excuse. At first, I asked him regularly, maybe once a week, then once every 2 weeks. "Have you called the clinic yet? When are you planning to rebook? Can we talk about the vasectomy?" And every single time, he had a reason why he couldn't do it right now. Work was slammed. The clinic was booked out for months. He'd get to it next week. He'd been meaning to call. He just needed to get through this big project first. The excuses became a catalog of creative avoidance. He couldn't take time off because of an important client meeting. Then it was because they were understaffed. Then because he was training a new employee. Then because of the holidays. Then because of tax season. Then because summer was busy. The reasons multiplied and shapeshifted, but the result was always the same. No appointment, no vasectomy, no end to my terror. What made it worse was that he never once had an honest conversation with me about it. He never sat me down and said, "I'm scared of the procedure." He never admitted, "I don't actually want to do this." He just avoided, deflected, made excuses. Like I was nagging him about cleaning the garage, not about protecting my body from another traumatic pregnancy. During those 2 years, our marriage became unrecognizable. We stopped having sex, obviously. That was my boundary, and I held to it. But we lost everything else, too. The casual touches disappeared. The goodnight kisses stopped. We stopped talking about anything deeper than whose turn it was to do bedtime or what we needed from the grocery store. We became roommates who shared children and a mortgage, nothing more. I could feel the distance growing between us like a physical thing, cold and vast. We'd go days barely speaking, weeks without any real connection. I'd look at him across the dinner table and wonder who this stranger was. This man who claimed to love me but couldn't be bothered to spend 15 minutes protecting me from the thing that terrified me most. Finally, 2 years into this sexless, intimateless wasteland of a marriage, I asked him point blank, "How do you think our marriage can survive this way?" He sat there, silent. He had nothing to say. No plan, no timeline, no acknowledgement of what he'd done to us. I told him I was done bringing it up. I was exhausted from begging my own husband to care about my well-being, but my position hadn't changed. No sex, no intimacy. Not until he got the vasectomy and I felt safe. He nodded, and then for months nothing changed at all. A couple of months after I told him I was done begging, he tried to initiate sex like nothing had ever happened. It was a random Tuesday night. The kids were asleep. I was reading in bed, trying to decompress from another day of single parenting, while technically still married. He slid into bed next to me and started touching my arm, my shoulder, moving closer with that familiar intent I hadn't felt in over 2 years. I didn't move, didn't reciprocate, just kept my eyes on my book, my body rigid with disbelief. After 2 years of watching our marriage decay, after all the missed appointments and broken promises, did he really think he could just touch me and everything would magically reset? When I didn't respond, he stopped, and then, so casually it made my blood run cold, he said, "I told you I have that appointment booked, right?" I put my book down and looked at him. "No," I said slowly. "You have not told me that. You haven't mentioned the vasectomy once since the last time I brought it up." He blinked, as if genuinely surprised. "Well, I have the appointment," he said, like he was informing me he'd picked up milk from the store. "When is it?" I asked, my voice flat. "I think it's like "A month from now," he said. That same vague phrasing, that same "I think" qualifier that had preceded the last disaster. Something inside me hardened into stone. I had been here before. I had trusted him before. I had reminded him, supported him, shown good faith before. And he had sat at his desk working while I came home expecting him to be recovering from surgery. "Come back to me after it's done," I told him. After the whole debacle with the last missed appointment and the subsequent 2-year wait, I'll believe it when it's actually done. He looked hurt, like I was being unreasonable, like I was the one who had broken trust. "And just so you know," I added, "you'll need to get cleared after 3 months. There's a follow-up sperm count test. I won't feel at ease until that's done too." He nodded, said he understood. But there was something hollow in his acknowledgement, something that told me he was hearing my words but not actually listening to them. 1 month from now, he said. 1 month until the vasectomy that might or might not actually happen. 1 month until I'd find out if this was another lie or if he was finally going to follow through. I didn't let myself hope. Hope had already broken me too many times. All I could do was wait and see if this time would be any different from the last. 1 month later, he told me he'd gotten the vasectomy, but once again, he made sure I couldn't verify it. The date was significant, though I doubt he noticed. Exactly 2 years and 1 month after the abortion. 2 years and 1 month since I'd first begged him to get this procedure. 2 years and 1 month of my body existing in a constant state of fear and vigilance. And now supposedly it was finally done. I should have felt relief. I should have felt something shift, some burden lifted off my shoulders. Instead, I just felt numb and suspicious, because when I offered to drive him to the clinic that morning, he said no. When I offered to pick him up afterward, he insisted he was fine taking an Uber. He didn't need my help, he said. He had it under control, the same way he'd had it under control the last time when he'd sat at his desk instead of going to the appointment. So he left that morning and I stayed home with the kids, and I had no idea if he was actually going to the clinic or just driving around for an hour before coming back home. I had no idea if he was actually getting the procedure or just getting coffee and inventing another lie to string me along for a few more months. He came home a few hours later, walking a bit gingerly, claiming it was done. He showed me the paperwork, or at least some paperwork that could have been from the clinic. I'm not a doctor. I couldn't verify if it was legitimate or something he'd printed off the internet. All I had was his word, and his word had proven worthless over the past 2 years. But I wanted to believe him. God, I was so tired of not believing him, so exhausted from the constant vigilance and suspicion. So I chose, in that moment, to take him at his word, to believe that maybe, finally, after everything, he had actually followed through. You'll need to get the follow-up test in 3 months, I reminded him. The sperm count check. That's when we'll know for sure it worked. He nodded. I know, he said. I will. I didn't realize then that this was just the beginning of another betrayal, that the unthinkable thing my husband would do wasn't refusing the vasectomy. It was getting it, and then refusing to prove he was actually sterile. 3 months would come and go, and once again, I'd be left wondering if anything he told me was true. 7 months have passed since the vasectomy, and he still hasn't gotten the sperm count test that would prove it actually worked. 3 months came and went without him scheduling the follow-up. I reminded him gently at first, then more insistently as the weeks stretched on. Have you made the appointment for the sperm count check? I'd ask. And just like before, the excuses started rolling in. He was busy. He'd get to it. He'd call tomorrow, next week, soon. But this time, there was a new twist to his evasion. About 4 months post-vasectomy, when I pressed him about the 3-month follow-up he'd missed, he dropped a bombshell that made my stomach turn. "They checked me at 2 weeks," he said casually, like this was completely normal. "And they told me I just need to ejaculate approximately 40 times. They said it's not necessary to get checked again at 3 months. I stared at him, waiting for him to crack a smile, to admit he was joking. But he just looked at me, completely serious, as if this made perfect sense. That night, I researched obsessively. I read medical articles, vasectomy recovery forums, urology websites, patient guidelines from every major hospital. And every single source said the same thing. A sperm count test at 3 months post-vasectomy is essential. It's standard medical protocol. Vasectomies can fail. The vas deferens can reconnect. There is no way to know for certain that a man is sterile without that test. The 40 ejaculations thing was real, but it was only part of the equation. You need both the ejaculations to clear residual sperm and the 3-month test to confirm there's no sperm production. No reputable doctor would tell a patient the test isn't necessary. It was either a misunderstanding or an outright lie. I confronted him with what I'd found. I showed him the medical sources. I explained, as calmly as I could, that I needed him to get the follow-up test for my peace of mind, that without it, I had no way of knowing if he was actually sterile. He made more excuses. The clinic was far away. He didn't have time. He'd already been checked. It was fine. We've had sex a handful of times since the supposed vasectomy, mostly because I believed he would eventually get the follow-up done. But now, 7 months later, I don't believe that anymore. I think he's lying to me, just like he's been lying for the past 2.5 years. And every time he touches me, I feel my anxiety spike. My body tense with the terror of another pregnancy. I am once again tired of nagging him, and once again I am feeling increasingly unsafe in my own marriage. This week, I decided to take matters into my own hands and looked into getting my tubes removed. I couldn't keep living in this state of perpetual anxiety. I couldn't keep begging my husband to do something as simple as go to a lab for a 15-minute sperm count test. If he wouldn't protect me, I'd have to protect myself. So I called my doctor's office and asked about a bilateral salpingectomy, the complete removal of both fallopian tubes. It's more invasive than a vasectomy, requires general anesthesia and actual surgery, but at least I'd know for certain I could never get pregnant again. They called me back with the cost breakdown. Even with insurance, I'd have to pay 25% out of pocket, $3,500. I sat there staring at that number, feeling something fundamental break inside me. We don't have $3,500. We're a single-income family with 2 kids. That money doesn't exist in our budget. I'd have to put it on a credit card, go into debt, pay interest for months or years, all because my husband refuses to spend 20 minutes at a laboratory. Let me be clear about what that means. A vasectomy is a 15-minute outpatient procedure. The follow-up sperm count test takes maybe 20 minutes. You provide a sample, they analyze it, they call you with results. Total time investment from start to finish. Less than an hour of his life spread across 4 months, but he won't do it. He got the surgery, maybe, but he won't finish the job. He won't give me the one thing that would let me sleep at night without terror. Meanwhile, my only alternative is a $3,500 surgery that would require me to go under anesthesia, take weeks to recover, and potentially develop complications. Now I'm sitting here, looking at going back on birth control. The same hormonal birth control I swore I'd never take again after 15 years of it. The same birth control I'd asked him to free me from by getting a simple vasectomy in the first place. And that's when it hit me with devastating clarity. I am married to a man who fundamentally does not care if I suffer, as long as he doesn't have to be inconvenienced. He watched my body break 6 times. He watched me bleed out alone. He watched me go through an abortion that traumatized me. And when I asked for one thing, one simple thing, to protect me from experiencing that horror again, he couldn't be bothered. This isn't about a vasectomy anymore. This is about who I'm married to, and I don't recognize him at all. I used to think love was about compromise and understanding, about respecting boundaries even when they hurt you. But I've learned something darker. Intimacy dies without safety. Real partnership means carrying the weight together, not watching your spouse collapse under burdens you refuse to share. The unthinkable wasn't one betrayal. It was the slow, deliberate erosion of trust, excuse by excuse, broken promise by broken promise. My husband became a spectator to my trauma, prioritizing his comfort over my survival. True love doesn't ask your partner to bleed alone. It doesn't ignore their terror. It doesn't add weight when they're already drowning. Love lightened the load, and anything less isn't love at all. Now, we want to hear from you. What did you think of this woman's journey through 6 pregnancies and 2 years of broken promises? What moment hit you the hardest? Share your thoughts in the comments. We would love to know which part of her story resonated with you the most. Was it the moment she bled out alone? The missed appointment debacle? Or the devastating realization about the $3,500? On a scale of 0 to 10, how would you rate her husband's behavior throughout this ordeal? And what advice would you give her now? Should she stay and try to rebuild? Or is it time to walk away? If you followed this emotional journey through I had 6 pregnancies in 7 years, and then my husband did the unthinkable, do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications to receive more raw, emotional, and thought-provoking stories like this one. Leave a like if you believe she deserves better. Comment whether you've experienced anything similar or what you would do in her situation. We will see you in the next story, because everyone deserves a partner who prioritizes their safety and well-being.